Start the meeting. This call to order the meeting of the Beaufort County School District's School Board Finance Committee. Please rise with me for this Pledge of Allegiance. Got the flag? Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I have an approval of the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda.
Earl, do you second?
Yes.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Do we have all of the meeting minutes? I didn't see the board docs about an hour ago.
Yes, we're all on there.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, we have a motion that we approve the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. Robin, are there any public comments?
No, sir.
Thank you. Approval of the minutes for October 14th, 2021.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes of October 14th.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the committee meeting minutes of October 14th. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Got it.
Aye.
Do we have a motion to approve the November 18th, 2021 committee meeting minutes?
So move, Mr. Chairman, November 18th.
Got a second?
I second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve the committee meeting minutes of November 18th. Are there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Next item, I hear a motion to approve the December 9th, 2021 committee meeting minutes.
I make a motion that we approve December 9th.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve December 9th, 2021 committee meeting minutes. Are there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Here. Did you say aye?
Yes.
Okay, thank
Yes,
you. All right. Next item is approval of the filing of the E-rate funding year 2022 Category 1 application. Ms. Crosby.
Yes, good evening, everyone.
Evening.
We come before you this evening, as we do once, sometimes twice a year, for E-rate funding approvals, or for allowing the administration to apply for various applications of funding. Just as a reminder, E-rate is a program through the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, that makes telecom and information services more affordable to schools and libraries every year. So it is a funding program. It is administered through a company called the USAC, Universal Services Administration Company. They facilitate the applications and the funding of the dollars that are available at the federal level. And just as to kind of bring it home, basically on our telephone bills and internet bills, there is a service fee called a universal service fee. And those are the fees that are captured at the federal level and then redistributed to schools and libraries across the country. So it's a multi-billion, I think it's a $4 billion program nationwide. And we are able to benefit from that each year, a portion of it. Generally what we're asking for this evening is to allow the school district to authorize the filing of E-rate funding year 22, our application for Category 1 services. Category 1 is our wide area network. It's our internet service provider, Hargray, that we pay annually, we contract with, and we pay about $716,000 a year for internet services for the district. It is funded in the general fund. We pay for it out of the technology budget, and the revenues that are generated from these reimbursements go right back into the general fund. So we budget about $620,000 a year as federal funding in the general fund to cover these costs. And we do pay in advance, and then we file an application. We answer questions of the organization, and we provide the documents, and then we're reimbursed for those funding categories. So this is a standard process that we go through each year, and the reimbursement rate is currently 80%. So basically, we're looking to get reimbursed, apply for reimbursement for 80% of that $716,000, which equals about $573,000. So I'd be happy to take any questions if you have them. Pretty straightforward, but I'm open for any questions you may have on this.
Are there any questions?
Nope, I don't have any.
I have one minor one. What's the lag time between the time we submit our request and we actually receive the funds?
It could be generally as much as 2 years. So 1 to 2 years within that time frame. It depends on the review process and how long it takes to get the documentations and get that back over to the USAC. So we are generally receiving applications from multiple years on an annual basis. So it could span, they could send a portion of it and then send another portion in another fiscal year.
Wow. Okay, that's why we have a fund balance, I guess, right?
Yes, sir. So it's sort of a rolling budget and funding application.
Any other questions?
Sure.
Can I have a motion to recommend that we bring to the full board a motion to authorize the filing of E-rate funding year 2022 applications for eligible E-rate Category 1 services?
A second.
We have a motion moved and seconded. Any discussion?
No, sir.
No, sir.
All those in favor then signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. What's the next item? Is the update on the impact fees, Ms. Crosby?
Yes, sir. So I provided a timeline of events of which I've been keeping a rolling timeline for the last few years of what has conspired with our impact fee discussions with county council and other municipalities. Is that available in board docs? I sent that over.
You send it, when did you send it?
It's in the timeline is.
Yeah, the timeline's in there.
Okay. If you wouldn't mind pulling that up real quick.
Yes, sorry.
Okay, that's fine.
The wrong page.
Yeah. So my recollection of the discussions began back in June of 2017 with a request from the county administrator to the superintendent at that time to commission a school impact fee study. And so, and I've updated it, through all the meetings and joint meetings and board approvals and the 3 council readings that were needed, which happened wrapped up in May and June of 2021. So about 6 to 7 months ago, we finalized through County Council and ordinance the actual impact fee approvals for the school district. So we were asked, Mr. Greenway, the county administrator, has been working on the intergovernmental agreements. So there are four actually, an intergovernmental agreement between the school district and the county, which we signed after the ordinance was approved and finalized that. There are 3 others with each of the municipalities in the Southern Service area that is planned for the impact fee and as part of the impact fee study. That is the town of Hilton Head, the town of Bluffton, and the city of Hardyville. So each of those organizations will have an intergovernmental agreement with the Beaufort County. And so in order to gain a better understanding and allow them to ask questions and get some responses, the town of Bluffton asked that we come to their council meeting on this past Tuesday night. So Dr. Rodriguez, Robert Otting, Carol Crutchfield, and myself, and Dr. Gwatz attended as well, went to the meeting. They provided some questions in advance, and we were able to have a dialogue with them about the impact of the study, what the projections were showing, were there any updates, and so on. And we were able to provide additional information. Emphasize some of the information that was in the study and to provide an update for some of the information since it had been a little over about 1.5 years since the study was completed. So I just wanted to share with you a few of the comments that were discussed during that meeting, and then sort of what our next steps are going forward. So from a financial perspective, one of the things that they were requesting was, just how are schools funded? How is school construction funded in South Carolina? So we talked about the 8% and the referendum options, all of which impact property taxes, and that the impact fees are not meant to replace the and would not be large enough to replace the need for borrowing through either 8% or referendum funding for school construction, but it would supplement that. It would provide, it would help to offset any potential increases that may be needed in property taxes as a result of borrowing for new construction projects. They requested if we were able to, were all municipalities required to adopt the fee? And the answer is no, they are not, but certain entities would impact the value of the revenues, the amount of revenues we're able to generate, and the projects we may be able to be supported as a result of their participation or not. For example, in town of Hilton Head and town of Hardyville, there would be fewer new homes, new dwellings that would be built, therefore less growth that would be impacting those areas, therefore fewer projects would be planned for those particular areas. So certainly if Bluffton did not participate, it would have a significant effect on our ability to generate those revenues. There is also, we have generated revenues of $1.4 million between July of 2021 and November 30th. So we have generated some in the unincorporated areas of the county through recent business license, or excuse me, building permits through the unincorporated areas, particularly in the Opatee area. So we are beginning to generate that revenue, but it would certainly help if the Bluffton Town of Bluffton would able to participate, and of course we're encouraging that, their support. Also, there was a question about a shorter plan. The study called for projections and growth data over a 10-year period. So the question was, can we, the assumption was that we would impose that fee over a 10-year period and then there couldn't be any change to that fee. It's actually in state law that the impact fee study is required to be updated at least once every 5 years. And the school district may not alter the rate, or the county, the rate cannot be altered, and nor can the calculations of the fee be changed until that plan is updated. The calculation of the fee would be updated at that 5-year mark, as well as the capital improvement plan, to see if the need is still there. And evaluations will be done, are required to be done with those studies. So there was some reassurance that it is a 5-year plan and that 5-year requirement, and that it would be reevaluated in the event that growth did not occur at the level that we had expected, or that it enhanced far more than we expected. If any changes needed to be made, it could be made in that 5-year window. I asked the Mr. Weiss, Carson Weiss, of our impact fee study consultant, when does that time period begin? And we believe that it begins at the date of the county council's final reading of the ordinance, final approval. So June 28th would be the beginning of that 5-year period, is our understanding. We will confirm that, of course, but so that is something that seemed to be very favorable to the council, and they were happy that they could reassess in 5 years and see if there needed to be any changes. Of course, there was some questions about where the projects are and who should pay for those. The bulk of the list of the projects in the study, I'd say 85 to 90% of the projects are particularly in the town of Bluffton, because impact fees, of course, do have to be specifically for new seats, additional seats that are needed for students, not as opposed to renovations of schools, just to upgrade facilities. And so that is the kind of summary of the discussion. The council is meeting in February in a workshop to further discuss this matter. And our next steps are to present at a future date, not yet determined, with the town of Hilton Head and the city of Hardyville. So over the course of the next, I would expect the next month, we will be presenting at those two entities as well. So, I'll stop there and allow you to ask any questions you may have.
Any questions or comments? I see no hands up. I have one quick question, and that is, are you going to, should we brief this to the full board? I would think that the full board should get a briefing on this at an upcoming full board meeting. Is that all right with the committee? Okay. So we'll do that. We'll ask that be added to the agenda on an upcoming meeting. We'll let the agenda setting committee determine when this should come about. Any other comments on this topic? All right. I'm going to move to a discussion of OEs 5, 6, and 18. Board members, you were at a meeting that we had with a consultant to talk about coherent governance. And I mentioned at that time that I would take a stab at reformatting, distilling, if you will, the OEs that we have, 5, 6, and 18, financial planning, financial administration, and the food and nutritional services. So what I did is I took our present OEs and took it out of the point and bullet format and put it into a narrative format. The reason I did this is frankly what I have seen for governing boards when they give their guidance to a educational institution. I'm talking specifically an educational institution. I went back to the community college I worked at and the 4-year private university and at the private boarding school, and went back and looked at what guidance those boards gave to the president of the community college, the president of the university, and the head of schools of the boarding school. And those were also all in a narrative. And it was, and why this was, is boards don't have staffs. Boards don't go down and look up the regulations or the state requirements or the federal requirements and say, oh, you better talk about this or that. Boards give general planning, strategic level planning in a narrative, and then that's given to the head of schools, the presidents of the university, and then they come back and say, okay, we heard you, we got it. This is our plan on how we're going to accomplish what you have given us. So basically, that operational expectation was that narrative, and the performance evaluation was the response. And that the response, that is given back to the board, and the board looks at that and says, okay, I agree with that. That looks good. That looks good. Whoops. You know, I'd like to have a little more specific goals in this particular area. And they would go back to the staff, to the president and the president's staff, and they would come back to the board with a revised performance evaluation, if you will. I went and looked at mine, and I brought from when I was in charge of a school, I read my operational expectations, and it was in a narrative, and it told me that I had to do this and this and this and this, but it was very general in terms. And then I had to, before my evaluation every year, I had to submit, much as did Frank Rodriguez this year, a very detailed accomplishments, what I have done in each of the areas in that general narrative that I was given, that initial guidance. And so the question was brought up, okay, so we make a motion in a board meeting and we say that, let's say, for example, we make a motion that Ms. Crosby will, on a monthly basis, give us the fund, the balance, our operational fund balance that the treasurer's office holds for us, that balance every month. Now, I'm not saying we're going to do that. I'm just using that as an example. But once that motion gets passed, that motion is then given to the superintendent, and the superintendent gives it to Ms. Crosby, and Ms. Crosby then adds that into a performance evaluation and comes back at a next board meeting and say, we heard you. We're going to give you this report. This is what the report's going to look like. Is that okay, board? And the board say, yeah, that's good. Or no, not exactly what we wanted. how about tweaking it here or there, and it goes back. And so it becomes documented in the performance evaluation, not in the operational expectation. It's in the performance evaluation. Because the operational expectation should be something that is relatively constant, that we should be able to look at them no more than once a year and say, is that still good? Is that still good? Yes. If it's not, then we rewrite it or add it and then give that to the staff. They would work it and come back to us. So that's when I looked at what coherent governance talks about. It talks about giving general strategic guidance to the superintendent, not as much specifics. Now, there are some specifics that you will see in what I have proposed. And for example, budget planning assumptions, including those assumptions of priority identified by the board in a work session and major funding initiatives by May 17th of each year. Okay, that's specific because that's kind of a routine thing and you've got it in there, and that tells other people, other board members as they come on, oh, okay, we do the budget and we have all the major funding and initiatives by May 17th of every year. It doesn't say what all is in that. It just says you're going to disclose budget planning assumptions, including the assumptions of priority identified by the board in a work session. So that's a bit of a change of what we've done. And what this operational expectations are is strategic. It's big picture. It's macro. Because if we get down into specifics, then we give a specific, and then we have to go back to the staff, and the staff has to figure out how to do it. If we say general, the staff figures out how to do it right from the get-go. And it comes back with the specifics, and we approve it or not. We do not have a staff. And I think we do a lot of staff work on this board. The staff does the coordination. The staff does all the eaches. So that's what this is. And I promised that I would do this at that meeting on the coherent governance piece. And I sent it out to you individually, to the individual committee members. So I'd like to have a discussion. Is this too general? Is this not specific enough? Is this too confusing? The budget, the way we have the OEs now, there's a number, and you can reference that number with the performance evaluation. That again, to me, that's kind of staff stuff. That's what staffs do. But what do you think? Yes, Dr. Wisniewski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just some general comments based on kind of what I've experienced as a board member in the last 3 years. The two main concerns that constituents come to me with have to do with student achievement or financial matters. And so those are the two areas where I think we always need to be specific, or at least stringent in our look at those different, if it is in general terms, that we're stringent and we're very, transparent about what we're doing. My main comment about the draft here is about basically the format of it. It doesn't align with the other OEs or the policy manual as it is right now, because all the other OEs and other areas of the policy manual include, superintendent shall or shall not, and then it does have those bullet points in the other areas. So unless we were going to do a whole nother revamp of the entire policy manual, which, as you know, I was on all the policy committees for the last 3 years, and that was a very large undertaking. That's just concerning to me from a formatting standpoint, that we'd have to go back and look at everything. I agree with some of the things that you said. I do think I would like to personally see some more specificity in here, particularly because some of the OEs or the bullet points that are presently in our policy manual come from previous board action. So when we bring it down to generalities and it's something that came from previous board action, obviously that board action occurred for a reason. There was something that prompted it and prompted that conversation. So those are just some of my tidbits to add to it, and just my 10,000-foot view at it.
Yeah, and my response to that is, you still see shall and must and so on in this narrative. And for specificity, the performance evaluations are as much a transparency option for the public as our OEs. They're not secret. So if a constituent wanted to know, I don't want to know exactly how the board makes their budget assumptions. Well, let me show you the PEs, and this is what the staff gives us. Right down the line. So it's there. We have, I think we talked about this in the technology committee meeting, is what we have now and the way it's formatted now really is because we lost trust in, the board lost trust in the administration, and our constituents lost trust in the district. And so I think what we have now is a reaction to that loss of trust and the requirements to be so specific. And that was 3 years ago. I think in the last 3 years, I know personally, I've gained a lot more trust in the staff and the administration. And I think the public and our constituents have gained more trust in our constituents. In our district. So I really think that what we have is a result of previous administrations and previous problems. And I don't see how being more general is going to cause that trust to be violated, because we still have a process in the PEs. The PEs, to my mind, are the most important piece. If you really want to get in the weeds, there they are in the PEs. They say exactly what they're supposed to do. And that's what Dr. Rodriguez, if you look at what he gave us for his evaluation, it was those PEs that he addressed individually. He said, I'm going to do this, and this is what I did. So what do you think, Earl?
I agree with what you did, and I think it'll work. But as far as the public, you're going to always have some folks in the public that's not going to agree with how the board work or how the district. And I think that the trust and faith in the district now is a lot better than it was several years ago. So I don't have any problem with that. I hope that we don't get down into doing micromanaging. That's my concern. I've listened to some of our meetings, committee meetings, where a board member will say, well, I want to hear from the superintendent. But he sent his staff to give us the information, and we got to go from there. That's just my piece. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Quaz, got your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Dick. I personally think this is great. I really like what you've done, and I thank you. It was clearly, you took your time, and it's something that required obviously a lot of work. I think I think it's better to have this sort of 30,000-foot view as you have put together here, because the board members, we're not the ones hired we're not the ones with expertise of running the district. So we don't know all those little cogs in the wheel that have to go be part of each thing that we want, you know, like saying, let's just say develop a budget that's not in excess of our revenue. Well, when somebody first comes on the board, they may not know what all our revenue sources are. That's something the district, you know, the administration knows. And so I think because the administration is the ones with the expertise, and particularly obviously the superintendent overseeing the entire district, I do think they're the ones that have to then decide how to interpret these broad statements that we say are the operational expectations. This is the framework you have to work in. So I think personally, I really like it. And I compliment you and thank you.
Thank you. I see David Stribinger is here. You have any comments?
Oh, yes, you knew I would, but I mean, you know my feeling. I like this. I just don't want to lose the detail that's in our current OEs. I would like us to have some way to communicate to the staff, these are the questions we're going to ask when you bring your interpretation to us. Give them a heads up. And it could be like a note, or I don't know how we're going to do it, but I agree with you. The OE should be high level. But if we know that there are certain questions we're going to ask, we should communicate that when they do their interpretation. You know, you can anticipate that Stribinger's going to ask you this. So you can head that discussion off, you know, by including it in your interpretation. I'm not sure what mechanism we would use, but all those bullet points we have in the OEs now are a communication to the staff. These are the kinds of questions we're going to ask you. So make sure you cover these. And it's also a way to not lose any of those questions. You know, you're talking about when the new boards come on and stuff. Well, we can pass our expertise on. We can pass what we've learned on to them somehow. But I agree with everything that you've said. To be in coherent governance, this is the high level way you're supposed to do it. The superintendent's interpretation is where the details are. I just don't ever want to lose the ability to communicate to the staff. You know, you can anticipate that we're going to ask these questions. You can anticipate it. Thanks.
Thank you. Tanya, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Kathy Robine's hands up as well.
As a staff person, if you got this, what would you do? What do you think?
Well, I'm not sure. This is quite, you know, we just gotten approval of our OEs, and we've just begun to report and getting used to that style of monitoring. So what I would do is, first of all, I've already researched another school district and found one with a set of board policies actually very similar to this. Wilkes, North Carolina, Wilkesboro, I believe it was. But Wilkes is the name of Wilkes County School District, and their policies were very brief. They're actually more brief than this. But my question would be to them is, how do you respond to those policies? And then what reporting, monitoring do you do to be able to respond to this? So it would really alter how we interpret things and how we monitor and provide information to the board. And I'm not sure, without some research and finding out what others are doing, how to begin. I mean, I think the data is all still there. It's just in more of a narrative format instead of numbered or bullet pointed. So the data that we would provide is going to be the same. We still will provide you the audit report and the budget and will still comply with all of these things. It's just basically the format of the report that we still report to the board on to say that we are in compliance with that policy, or do we let the audit and the budget speak for themselves that we are in compliance with those policies? So just it will require some research for me at first glance. I like it, but would need to see how to implement it.
Understand, and I think that's very, very, very sound. And I want to make sure that this is just a draft. This is just for discussion. This is something that the full board needs to look at. And it just as a result of that meeting that we had on the coherent governance. And so, you know, I don't want the staff to overreact to this or anything, because this is just a straw man. Okay.
Kathy's hands up.
Whose hands up?
Kathy Robine.
Kathy. Go ahead, Kathy.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I think we have a couple things here. This would be a change in policy because OEs are policies. So it would have to go, from my standpoint, this would have to go be adopted as a change in policy. And I don't have a problem with that. But Dick, you also mentioned PEs, and we don't have PEs anymore. So can you help me understand what you were saying when you were mentioning PEs? You said some of this stuff will still be measured by PEs. Well, we don't have PEs anymore.
Okay. What do we call the interpretation?
Interpretations of the OEs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I consider performance evaluation. PEs.
Okay. So
interpretation piece.
So with this OE, I can't see the number on top of it. So this OE6 or whatever it is. So then this replaces, it's a policy change because we've adopted the other OE6. And then this would be given to the superintendent for that interpretation and ways of monitoring. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. I think, you know, I think if we were going to do something like this, similar to what Rachel said, is do we cherry pick and do just certain OEs like this, or do we go back and do every single OE to make them broader? That would be my question.
You know, I don't want to make work or anything. I want to try to make it easier, because I really see the policy. That's been my real problem with our policy that we've been going through. We have spent so much time on policies and getting into the eaches that staffs normally do, but we've been doing it ourselves. Policy should be very, very consistent. A policy is there for a lot of reasons, one of which is to be the historical document. This is how we do things here. It's kind of like standard operating procedures are. This is what we do. And I've been in a lot of organizations, and every organization has OEs or standard operating procedures. And I read those and I put them away. And I do my job. And at the end of about a year, I've gone through a complete cycle. Every business, every school has a annual cycle. At the end of the first cycle, I bring those OEs, those SOPs, and I read through it and say, yep, I'm doing that. Whoops, I'm not doing that. I wonder why. I got to go back to the staff and find out why are we doing that? Maybe we should change it. And then I'll change it, and then then it stays there, and it comes back another year, and we look at it again. It's a constant process, but it's not something that should be taking a whole lot of time, because it's basically, this is how we do things. Because as people come in to the organization, you want to give them, here's what we do. This is how we do things. And boy, we spent a lot of time on that policy, an awful lot of time, and with very little payoff, I believe. I'm looking at how much results did we get for the time and energy. And frankly, I wouldn't say it's very much. But after a year of working at it and look at it, I might say, okay, that part's good. This part we need to change. Because we don't go and we operate. When we make a decision as a board, do we go back and say, well, have we done that? You know, we just do it. We know what we need to do. We make a decision. We made a decision on COVID. We didn't have any policy on COVID in there. It didn't stop us from making COVID assumptions. So yeah, it's just a philosophical piece. And I understand what you're saying, because we spent all this time on the policy manual. It didn't take that much time to reformat this out of the bullets into this. If you read through this and compare it to what we have, everything just about is there, except some real redundant stuff that I took out because it was just redundant. So that's
I do think that a lot of our OEs have redundancies in them that we've discovered as we've gone through for the first time with the monitoring. I think there's possibilities. I just think that we just have to remember that OEs are policy. So if we're going to change them, it's a change in policy. Right. That's all.
And I'm really saying that this is just a result of the conference that we had with the consultant on the coherent governance model. And I said I would do this, and this is what I've done. And I don't expect any action to be done on this. I don't at all, until maybe a work session when we're going to review our policies. And then maybe this is brought up or maybe it's not. I don't have any strong feelings one way or the other. But I said I would do this, and so here it is. And we'll let that go from whatever worth it has. Okay, any other comments or questions?
David's hand's back up.
Who's?
David.
Okay, David?
Thank you, Dick. There's a fundamental question that this brings to light, and that is, are we going to try to become more faithful to coherent governance as interpreted by Peggy, or not? And if we say yes, I mean, when this comes before the board, that's the decision. Are we going to become more faithful? And that's what we have been trying to do during 2 years, and we put a lot of work into it, but we know more now. If we decide to become more faithful, we are going to have to go back and modify the policies. That's just the way it is. So, this is kind of fundamental. The board's got to say, yes, we want to avoid redoing policies, or yes, we want to follow Peggy's advice and go in this direction. Your straw man here is going to bring that fundamental issue to the board, and we need to decide which way we're headed.
Okay, Dr. Wisniewski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think that it's been, I mean, I think our policies were formally adopted in February of last year. So we're coming up just now on 1 year of those policies being in effect. And for staff to be able to look at those OEs, put them into a report to the board, and then for us to ask questions. Just some final comments on it is that I would like to see more time for that to play out and for those OEs to come forward to us and us to ask questions before there is any type of fundamental change to the policy manual as a whole in formatting. I just feel like they've got a lot going on with COVID, and we obviously have a lot going on as board. And I think to give it some time to see how it plays out would be most prudent. And then if we did bring them forward, I would like to see it similar to how we did in the policy committee, where we had the full markup version of reds with strike throughs and blue text and things like that. So we can really see with our eyes how it changed. I mean, I can go back and forth between this draft version and our current policies, but without a markup, I don't really know, what's in there, what's not. And then just one final comment on, I know there's been some conversation about the reason why we have our policies the way we have them now is because that there was perhaps some distrust previously, either by board members or administration, constituencies, what have you. And I think the reason why we presently have rebuilt that trust has something to do with the lens that we've been using and the amount of work that we did put into the policies and the questions that new board members brought on, and the way that we all were respectful in that tone and in those questions. So I think that helped to rebuild that trust. Obviously, we have a great leader in the superintendent as well. And I just like to see us continuing on that path before we try to pivot and change anything yet. Although I do agree with David where it comes down to the conversation that was had with Ms. Torrey about coherent governance and how that should be implemented. But those are just my comments. Take them for what you will. And I appreciate you doing all this work, Dick. I know that's definitely not easy to put all that into a narrative format, and I commend you for doing it. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's see what we have next.
Earl, you have Earl's hand up, and then you have William's hand.
Okay, whose hands up?
Earl's was first, and then Williams.
Okay, Mr. Campbell?
Yes, I would just ask board members, do we think that we need to review our OEs every year, like we used to do with policies before? We did that, so maybe that's another thing we need to discuss it and find out from the board if that's what they want to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
I was just going to say that I definitely agree with Dr. Walensky, and I also agree with Mr. Scrivener as well. And they both bring up good points that I think that we need to be talked about for the days to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is discussion of any future topics. Ms. Crosby, I think do you have a future topic?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I do. I have two, actually. I have we're going to have the second quarter financial report available, ready for the next finance committee meeting. And it's still early, but we will have some sort of a budget update. It may include a calendar of our work. And so you all know exactly what we've worked on so far and what our next steps are. So I would say a budget update 2022-2023.
Okay. Thank you. Any other topics?
No, I don't.
I don't have anything.
Nothing.
I don't have anything either.
Mhm.
There's no other topics for discussion. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adjourn. Any discussion?
No?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.